Hello everyone, this is Kumar and Hardhat. In this video, we will learn about setting up your Solidity project using Hardhat. Hardhat is a development tool that is mostly used for EVM-based chains and networks. And you can deploy your smart contract, your Solidity smart contract, and also verify it, compile it, do everything around it, test it. And it's one of the most used frameworks, so it's best we learn how to use it, and we'll use it to deploy a smart contract and verify it on ShimmerEVM. So let's get started. First of all, we're starting here with a completely empty project. So first thing that we need to do is create the project. The best way to do it is by just running npm init. It's a JavaScript project, obviously. If you like yarn, you can also do yarn, same thing. And it sort of generates a package.json file for us, so we don't need to uh, manually create all that. We are right now opening this in VS Code, which is the Visual Studio Code. If you use any other code editor, completely fine. Use whatever editor you prefer. And let's start by learning about what this package.json is. If you're very new to Node.js or npm, would suggest you first make yourself aware of all the different intricacies of it. We'll not be covering that in this video, but we'll go ahead and we'll start by installing Hardhat. So we'll be running it in safe dev because it's a dev dependency, and it will just take a couple of seconds and we should be ready with it. Once ready, we'll be good to go to start our project. So Hardhat is one of the libraries that we'll need. We'll also need a couple of more libraries, mostly from operations projects. Give it a couple of seconds. Um, all right. So now if we go back to our project, now you'll see there's a node modules because it has sort of installed a lot of libraries dependencies that Hardhat is dependent on as well. So we not just install one package, but we actually install a lot of packages. So can be an advantage or disadvantage as you see it for Node.js. But let's just start with Hardhat. Once you run npx Hardhat, it will sort of generate a self-generating code base. Depending on what your preference is, if you're more familiar yourself with TypeScript project, you can just use TypeScript project. If you are more familiar with JavaScript, you can use JavaScript. If you don't want to use anything and you want to structure everything by yourself, you could just use an empty hardhat.config.js. For this exercise, we'll just use a JavaScript project, and we'll just press Y for everything. So we want to install gitignore, we want to install this particular dependency, which is Hardhat toolbox. The Hardhat toolbox will be using to actually compile the smart contract. So it's actually kind of useful. And while this is installing, just go back and check out the different directories that has been created now. And the first thing and the most important thing to notice is the hardhat.config.js, which currently has Solidity version, and the Solidity version will be used to is very important because all your smart contracts, the contracts in this project is all under contracts, so you will need to try there. And it's important to have the Solidity version here because the compiler that you'll be using should be compatible with this particular Solidity version. So whatever smart contract you have should be supporting that particular compiler version. So if your smart contract, in particular this smart contract says that greater than 0.8.9, any compiler should work. But if it is a very strict requirement that it needs only 0.8.9, then this particular then this particular version will not have worked. This is a very basic log contract that has been generated. As you can see in the constructor, it's payable, so you will need to pay some you will need to pay some amount to actually deploy this contract. You can find in the scripts there is a deploy.js script right here, and they are using um, ethers from the Hardhat inside from the Hardhat to sort of create the contract factory, which will actually find out all the ABI and other things that might be required for the deployment, and then it will sort of deploy it with an unlock time, which is timestamp plus 60 seconds, and with a value which is a locked amount, which is at 0.001 in native tokens. Our case is the Shimmer tokens. And once it's deployed, we'll be getting this sort of a message right here. So let's just try to see if okay, our packages are installed. Nothing too much to worry about in here. So let's try and deploy it. Now, this particular right now, we won't be able to deploy it to ShimmerEVM because we are missing the config files. First, we need to add the config. One of the most important things that we need to add is really is the networks. So let's just add that. And in this, we are specifying, we are telling Hardhat that, hey, there's a ShimmerEVM testnet config, which has a URL. There's the JSON RPC URL, which you will find. This is a public JSON RPC URL. If you're deploying to your own chain, then replace it with your own JSON RPC URL. Use the chain ID of the one that you have deployed. In accounts, you have a private key. Now, this private key you can get from your own wallet. Do not share this private key anywhere and with anybody else. So prevent it from sharing into your Git, you can use something called as .env. Let's try to install .env. I just wrote npmi. You can write the entire thing npm install and also be. And to start using .env, you just need to add this particular line over here, and then you can add private key. So either you can add like something like this, or you can add this .env dot it's private. And now, if we have a .env file over here, so let's say you create a .env file, and in here you have a private key and a private key, whatever, this private key will come up. Now, this private key needs to be from an actual account. You can't just have anything in there. So first you will need to get your private key. You can either get your private key, generate a new private key from your wallet, or you can export it, let's say, from your MetaMask or something. You just go to account details, export your private key, enter your MetaMask password, and you'll be able to export it. I'll just do it offline, and I'll come back right back. Right. Give me a second while I quickly copy my private key in here. Right. And so we have a private key all set up. Now, we can also add one more line, which will make it a little more easier for us in the upcoming all the functions running and everything. Just add a default network. This will tell Hardhat that, hey, this is my default network. Even if you don't provide the network information, it should still be fine, right? And all right, so let's first start with compiling and see if our contract has any errors. So when we run compile, all right, it says compiled, and now you can see that there are some additional files that is created, right? There's a cache, which is all the things that it is compiled, and it will sort of tell us the next time it compiles something, right? And then there is artifacts in which we will have the ABI and the bytecode and other details. This is not for us, obviously, to go through. Obviously, you can use the ABI when you're uh, pushing it into your, let's say, dApp, and you will need to use that to call the functions in this smart contract. Now, but the most important thing for us is the deploy one. So once the contract is actually compiled, we can go ahead and deploy it. Just try to deploy the smart contract. Again, depending on your network connectivity issues, and this might take anywhere from a couple of seconds to a couple of more seconds. should not take more than a minute. All right, because it's deployed and it's deployed to this particular address, and the timestamp is something. And let's try to look into this particular address. Oops, wrong thing. The Explorer might be a little slow and behind, but okay, it has resynced it. So if your contract doesn't show up immediately right after deploying, do not worry. Just wait for some time for the Explorer to sync up with the network and your contract will show up again. Now, a contract is obviously deployed, but we will not be able to see anything in there, right? Because there's nothing else in the in the in this particular address. So instead, what we can do is we will need to verify this contract so we can actually see it there. To verify our contract, we will need to add another object to our hardhat config file. So we had our networks here, and we will add an etherscan. This etherscan object is very interesting because here we have a custom chains, it's sort of similar information, chain ID, but in URLs, we have the Explorer API URL and the Explorer browser URL. This is the URL that we are on right now, right? And get rid of any trailing slashes because sometimes Hardhat creates nuisance because of that. The API key is purely dummy. You can use whatever you want. It just etherscan, the Hardhat etherscan needs an API key to be present. For our Explorer, it might not need at all. Right. Now let's try to verify the contract now. To verify, it's a simple command. It's something like this: npx hardhat verify, and then you can specify the network, and then you have to specify the unlock address and unlock time. So the address is this, and the unlock time is right here. Just run it and just wait a couple of seconds, and it will just say that, all right, okay, this might happen sometimes while you're verifying, but do not worry, you can just run it again after a bit. It might happen due to a number of reasons. It might not be because your contract, there's something wrong in your contract. It might be just because the network is congested right now, and or there is something else that has been happening with your proxy or something else. And just run it again, or just wait a couple of seconds and then run it again. You should be able to go. So while we wait for this, so once it is done, we are good to go with our Solidity smart contract all the way deploying part. And of course, if you deploy your smart contracts, and if you have any questions, come to the EVM contracts channel or the ISO discussion channel on the Shimmer Discord, and feel free to ask your questions at any given point in time. Sometimes it might take a couple of more minutes than we would want, but don't worry, it will work. Taking way too long, and we would want it to be. Just try to cancel this and run it again. And okay, as doing it again. There's another way that you can see what exactly is wrong with your by adding a show stack trace, in which it will also display additional logs that might help you debug what exactly is wrong. Mostly this happens because of network issues. Usually happens. Might be some other issue as well. So come back and check it out later as well. And sometimes what might happen is that it might verify it, but if your network got disconnected or something, you might not get response, and while it might show timeout while it is already verified. Make sure you go back and check. But mostly it will give you a response if you have good connectivity. Anyway, while we wait, keep waiting for this will happen at some point. If you have any questions, feel free to come back and ask it. That's all for this session. Hope you deploy this and have a good day.